Hi, my name's Chris. This is the Chamael Corp, and today we're going to talk about how to get this to look like this. Don't go away. Hi. Last time we talked about sanding down the helmet, getting rid of as many of those print lines as we could, but that's only the beginning because now there are still print lines, there are still imperfections that we need to get out, and we're going to talk about the best way to do that. So there are there's two common techniques that are happening right now for a 3D print. After that initial layer of sanding, you need to fill in those remaining print lines and any of those imperfections with a substance that you can then sand over to make it smooth. The common ones are Bondo Spot Putty, and recently people have been using UV resin. I opted to go a different direction, and I want to tell you why. And this is a great time to talk about something that's also very important. With anything, whether it is sanding, whether it is using chemicals such as resin, you need to take the proper safety precautions. A friend of mine mentioned in my last video, I was sanding without any sort of a face mask or a respirator on. In this day and age, everybody should have a mask. You only have one set of lungs, you only have one body, and taking care of yourself should be your number one priority whenever you're working with things like this. So the Bondo, when you sand that is not something you want to be breathing in. Also, you need to be using gloves if you're using Bondo when you're smoothing out over the helmet. With the resin, that emits fumes. They are dangerous. If you do it consistently, it will likely kill you. So, in my opinion, having two small children and a dog in my house, I am not going to mess around with something like resin. I also don't want to take the chance with something like Bondo. So what I've done is I've used Drydex spackling. What that allows you to do is it allows you to smear a thick layer over top of that helmet. It gets into any of those print lines, and then we can sand it off. Now, I am still going to be masking when I sand this off. It is not anywhere near as bad as the resin, and it's safer than the Bondo. But for me, my well-being and the well-being of my family, this is what I chose to do. I will always choose safety over speed. I think that's a good mantra, and I think it's something that is worth mentioning. So please, when you're working with this stuff, use a mask, use a glove if it's caustic or toxic material, because you've only got one body and you need to take care of it. All right, my PSA is over. What we're going to do is we're going to walk through how this goes on. Then we're going to, after it's dried, we're going to take the sander to it again. We're going to take all that down. And we're going to hit it with some primer, and we're going to see how it looks. So let's jump right into that. Okay, so the first thing we're doing is we have a putty knife and a piece of craft foam. We're going to use the putty knife to just get a good amount on there, and the craft foam will actually conform to the top of the dome, so you can push all of that stuff, all of that spackle in to those print lines. And it is kind of time consuming, and you want to make sure you get a liberal amount on there. Go ahead and cake it on, because you can sand it off really easily, which we're going to see here later in the video. The video is obviously sped up, but what it's doing is it's showing you techniques that you can use to get into some of those nooks and those crannies. This stuff usually takes a few hours to fully dry, and the nice thing about it is it actually turns from pink to white after it's already dried. So you don't have to guess, you don't have to worry about sanding too soon, because you're going to be able to tell when it's able to be sanded. And the real trick is when you get into some of these areas like the cheeks of the helmet, where you've got the indentations and some of those contour lines and things like that. So we're going to get there in a second, but Basically, you can already see, you know, obviously these were taken a couple hours apart, but you can see the top, how it's now white. And as I'm moving across the rest of the helmet, I'm trying to get every inch. Even if it looks smooth, I'm trying to get a layer on there because it's going to get rid of any of those imperfections that you see. And again, this is the time-consuming part right around here. And I think we're going to move to painting. So you notice I do have my mask on. And as I pick up the mouse sander, you're going to see how much dust this is going to start kicking off as we go. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that over the dome, which is where I've caked most of that spackle. And I'm using canned air to kind of blow that dust away to see what I'm working with. Now the downside with the spackle is moisture, you know, a damp paper towel or water is not something you can use to clean off your print after you've applied it, because that water is actually going to wash that spackle out of the groove and you're going to end up undoing all of the work you've just done. So canned air and a dry paper towel or dry towel is generally what I use. You'll notice I'm jumping in between hand sanding around some of the detail lines as well as going back to that mouse sander to hit the larger areas. The mouse sander saves a ton of time. If you're trying to do this all by hand without any sort of a power tool, you are going to be spending hours upon hours. Your arm is going to hurt. Trust me on this. Because you can see, even sped up, how quickly the mouse sander's taking care of a lot of these areas. And again, I mean, you can look at my pants and you can look at my shirt and you can see all of the dust even blowing in the wind that this is kicking up. So once again, safety is paramount when you're dusting or when you're sanding something like this. You do not want to be breathing spackle dust in. You definitely don't want to be breathing Bondo in. And if you are using resin, you don't want to be breathing those fumes in either. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, we got it cleaned off, and now we're going to hit it with just a base black. We then let that dry, and then we're going to hit it with the filler primer, which is going to fill in any of those excess areas and really allow us to get a clean finish. So as you can see, we've got a pretty good start on this helmet. I can still see print lines. So I will be sanding down this fillable primer that I used and likely applying at least another coat of black to make sure this is as smooth as I can get it. But this is the process. You need to sand, you need to fill, you need to sand again, prime. That black primer, again, that's just going to allow you to see where you have imperfections that you still need to work on. And then the fillable primer is really good just to cover up those print lines. But you basically rinse and repeat this process until you're happy with how your piece looks. It might be one time, it might be 5 or 6 times, it just depends. So next time, we're going to take a break from working on the pieces to talk about the flight suit that recently arrived from China. You can check that out a few stories or a few videos back, but we will take that out of the package. We will see how it looks. We will see how it fits and if it meets my needs. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so that when I post new content, you get notified. Please hit the thumbs up if you like this video, and leverage the comment section if you have questions or you have suggestions for other creators and makers out there. This can be a great place for everybody to learn and share ideas, and I'm all about that. We'll see you next time, and in the meantime, keep creating.